water and sewer lines. Serving both residential and commercial properties. The One Tom Plumber office is located at 509 South Beeline Highway, and their number is 928-267-3411.
Good morning, Rim Country. I want to thank One Tom Plumber for sponsoring our Community Spotlight program. Chris Higgins in the studio at the Sawmill Theater Movie Complex, and hope you're having a wonderful Friday morning. It is time for, again, our Community Spotlight program, and you can listen on the radio, online, or you can watch on our KRIM Radio Facebook page. And I think today you will want to be watching, because we have in the studio owners of Arizona Rattlesnake Aversion, Ben and Julia Shakespeare. Good morning.
Good morning, Chris.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having us. It's an absolute honor.
Yes, you are so welcome. I know Ben and I spoke out at the Mademoiselle Hotel and Casino, where you were one day for an event out there, about this business that you both started how long ago?
We're going on 2 years now, just about 2 years in the summer.
2 years. And again, it is Arizona Rattlesnake Aversion. Their website is arizonarattlesnake.com, and you can go there to learn all about what they do, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And this is canine rattlesnake aversion training that you're doing, correct?
Yes, Chris.
So I asked this before the program, but whose idea was this again?
That would be me.
That would be you. And Julia, what did you say when he brought this idea to you?
I thought he was insane, honestly, but you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's a very needed service in Rim Country, and there wasn't anybody reliably providing it, so took a little convincing, you know, coming around to the whole dealing with the snakes and everything, but you know, it's much needed. So
yes, that is for sure, especially being in a rural area, away from emergency veterinarian services. It takes longer, I guess, to get down to the vet. So if your dog does get bit by a rattlesnake, and with dogs, how does that work? Approximately how long? I know it probably depends on the size of the dog, the rattlesnake, a lot of different factors, but just an average.
It's a medical emergency. They need to be to the vet straight away. So it is hard to put a exact time frame on it, because rattlesnake envenomation can start affecting a dog in seconds, or it might take hours for it to start affecting the dog. But it needs to be treated as a medical emergency and straight to the pet ER, basically. So it's very hard to put a time frame on it. But what I tell people is getting their dog to the vet as soon as possible, which up here is 70 minutes, maybe 60 minutes if you're rushing a little bit, is the critical time frame, at least in my opinion.
And now there are different methods that have been used over the years for canine rattlesnake aversion training, correct?
Yes, yeah, it's evolved quite a lot in the last decade or two, so we're really at kind of the pinnacle of the science, I think, right now. We learn more every day, but I think right now where we are is the best it's ever been with rattlesnake training.
Okay, so I guess explain the type of training that you utilize.
Yeah, so we do things a bit differently than a lot of the trainers in the state. Not that there's a lot of them, but we use live muzzled rattlesnakes. And that is exactly what it sounds like. It is a rattlesnake that has been specially muzzled so it cannot open its mouth and it can't bite a dog. But at the same time, other than that muzzle, it still acts like a rattlesnake, moves like a rattlesnake, it sounds like a rattlesnake. That's opposed to some of the other methods that involved cage snakes or snakes in boxes, which just isn't the same as the dog seeing the snake as it would see it in the wild, which is not in a box or not in a cage. Dogs do really well with very direct communication, so you want to be as direct as possible with that training, which involves using the most realistic snake you can. The other thing they used to do, which we've thankfully moved away from, is removing the fangs from the rattlesnake, which quite literally involves pulling them out with pliers. It's not effective because rattlesnakes do have multiple fangs lined up ready to use sometimes. And it's obviously incredibly cruel to the snake. I know not everyone loves rattlesnakes, but I think most can agree we don't want to maim them. So it's come a long way.
Well, and earlier, because you brought a couple of your rattlesnakes with you today, what are the two types that you brought?
We've got an Arizona black today and a black-tailed rattlesnake. So they're probably the two most common in Payson, Rim Country area.
And I believe that blacktail is the one you had out earlier.
Yeah, that was the black-tail.
And the snakes, I mean, their skin, it's beautiful. The colors, you know, on snakes, just so pretty. I know there's people that, some that have definitely fear of snakes, don't want anything to do with them. And then there's others that have them as pets.
Exactly.
And even venomous snakes, is that correct? There's people now that have venomous snakes as pets?
Yeah, so it depends on where you are, what state you live in. But in Arizona, the law says that with certain permits you can keep native venomous snakes. So we couldn't go get a copperhead from out east, for example, and keep that as a pet in Arizona. But any native venomous snakes that are protected, and the commissioner, Game and Fish Commissioner, has authorized a bag limit for. So just like you'd hunt your elk, you can hunt your snake and keep them within certain limits.
No blue-slang vipers.
No blue slangs.
No, and if anyone wanted one of those, I don't know, I'd question them a little bit.
I'd probably have some words for them too.
No. Yeah, in a little bit, we'll get out one of the rattlesnakes so people can see. Again, that's why if you are not watching, you should watch and see. And the muzzle, so it's very interesting. They don't come pre-muzzled. It's not like you can go on Amazon or somewhere or down to a pet store in the valley and, hey, can I get a muzzled Arizona blacktail? No.
Yeah,
So,
they'd look at you a bit funny.
so you guys put the muzzle on?
Yes, we do. We do.
Wow. And how? Because and people will see the muzzle. It's kind of crazy looking, just kind of wrapped around the nose. How is that secured on, or how do you put it on?
Very slowly and patiently, while simultaneously saying a lot of prayers, I think is the best explanation. So we do it as safe as possible. We tube the snakes, which involves putting them in a long transparent tube, basically, to minimize the movement and the thrashing of that body. That keeps us safer, but we also don't want the rattlesnake damaging its spine or something like that from thrashing around. And then you pin them, very similar to what you'd see if you've ever seen people extracting venom from snakes. Exactly, milking snakes. And then from there, we just slowly work that muzzle on. It used to take probably 30 minutes to do a snake when we first started, and now it takes about 10. If 10 would be a long time, I'd say 3 to 5 minutes, unless the snake's in a mood, which just like us happens.
Yes, and how long can you keep that muzzle on a snake?
So we don't want to keep it. It doesn't impact the snake other than emotionally. It's not hurting them. It's not restricting their breathing or anything like that. But at the same time, it's not pleasant. So we try to minimize how long it's on for. Generally, if we're out training for a day, it might be on for 8 to 10 hours, and that's absolutely fine.
Okay, so yeah, let's get into the training a little bit and what that looks like. Now, you said some of the other methods that are used, the snake is in a cage or a box. I would imagine if they're in a box, then the dog never gets to see the snake, maybe? Or
not exactly. So even in a cage or a box with holes, if there is some visibility, it's just not how the dog would naturally see the snake, which is out in the garden or down by the river.
On a hiking trail.
Exactly. It would be unusual for a dog to come across a snake sitting in a cage. So we want to try to replicate as close as possible to what it would actually see. The other methods often involve teaching them in groups as well. Which if you have a dog or you've ever seen a dog, you get a group of dogs, they don't listen very well and they can't concentrate very well when there's other dogs around. So we do it one-on-one so the dog's not distracted by anything else.
Okay. So then what does a training session look like? You have the dog and then you have a muzzled snake. And I guess how much time do you spend or reassuring the owner, pet owner, that the snake is muzzled, it's not going to come off, your dog is not going to be bit or get bit? Is that a little bit of a process?
It's a big part of it, yes.
Okay.
You know, a training is surprisingly quick. It only takes about 30 minutes to do a dog. Oftentimes, half of that is spent talking to the owners. It's 50% educating the dog and it's 50% educating the owner. It's terrifying if you're a dog lover to walk your dog up to a rattlesnake, even if it's muzzled, and I can give you every assurance in the world. It's a terrifying thing for people.
Yeah.
But once we get started, they very quickly realize how well it's done, and that vanishes pretty quickly. We've trained about 1,000 dogs in the last 18 months, or more than 1,000, I'd say.
More than 1,000?
Yes.
Yeah.
You've been busy with this.
Oh,
Yeah.
and we've had we've only had a single dog owner that couldn't actually go through the training, and one
Gotcha.
of us had to step in and lead that dog through the training
Okay.
for them. So we deal with it a lot, but most people, when they see it in operation, can kind of you know, fight back that fear for the 20-30 minutes that we need them to.
Gotcha. So during this, and again, I was looking at your website a little bit, so during this process, the dog is on a leash the entire time? Okay.
Yeah, so there's generally 3 to 4 steps. The first one is going to involve letting the dog approach a rattlesnake and explore it. And what that looks like is the dog is walked on a leash, just because if they get really frightened, we don't want them running off onto a road or anything like that. So the dog, while on a leash, walks up to the rattlesnake. Most dogs are going to see a snake and go, great, new toy, got to check this out, because dogs are very curious, and that's why they're 20 times more likely to get bit. We see a rattlesnake and go, don't get closer.
Yeah.
Dog sees a rattlesnake and goes, I should sniff this.
What is that?
Exactly.
Yeah, all the thoughts.
Yep.
I think of the movie Up,
Yep.
and you know, the dog and just all the thoughts, and the doctor that, you know, could...
They can't help
make those-
themselves.
Yeah, but just all the thoughts, and hey, whoa, what's that? Hey, what is it? Ooh, what do you smell like? Yeah.
So
all that.
when the dog goes up to that snake, they get a nice sniff, and I mean, they can lick it, they can get that close. The snake is not going to be able to bite them. And when they're doing that, they receive a correction, a static shock correction from a collar right on the side of the neck, which, don't get me wrong, is not pleasant for the dog, but it's very, very quick, a quarter of a second, and what it's doing is simulating a rattlesnake bite.
Gotcha.
Dog sticks its nose in the snake, feels a prick suddenly on the side of its neck, and goes,
Yeah.
oh, I've been bitten.
Gotcha.
From there, we remove the snake actually, and we follow up with scents and sounds. We want to make sure the dog can recognize the danger just from smelling a rattlesnake or just from hearing the rattlesnake. Because a lot of the times the dogs don't see the snake. It's hidden under a log, it's in a bush, it's too late by the time they see
Yes.
it.
Okay.
So we use rattlesnake scents to get them averse to just the smell of the snake, and then we'll also hide Bluetooth speakers in bushes or in logs and see if we can get the same response from the dog just from hearing the sound.
So, yeah, there's a lot that goes into the training then. It isn't just a, hey, here's a rattlesnake and shock, stay away, that
Yep.
dog. No, but, and so, yeah, and when you mention the shock, that, you know, they do feel that and it isn't pleasant,
Yeah.
it is a lot, it isn't as pleasant nearly as, bad as a bite.
Exactly.
So, in comparison, if, you know, as a dog owner, you're thinking, wait a second, I don't, you know, use shock collars, I never want my dog to get shocked. It's not just to shock the dog to shock it,
Yeah.
but it is training the dog, teaching the dog that, hey, this is really bad news, stay away from it.
And we do get asked that a lot. Why can't you do this with positive reinforcement? Telling
okay.
the dog no, rewarding it for when it does the right thing. Positive reinforcement works for a lot of things, but if you've got a dog and never trained it to sit or stay, you know it works pretty well most of the time. There's going to be those times though where the dog doesn't listen. And it's funny when they do it when you're telling them to sit or stay, but not when there's a rattlesnake involved. There's no second chances with rattlesnakes. The consequence is a lot more dire. So unfortunately, we need the dogs to understand the severity of it. Not just this is a bad idea, but they need to know that this will kill you. And the only way to really do that is to simulate the bite and make them experience that direct consequence immediately from that. We can't take any second chances. So that's the way we have to do it, unfortunately.
And you're really good about keeping it as few shots as possible and as low as possible too. Some dogs it's 1 and that's all they need, and we're done. Sometimes it's 2 or 3. It just depends on the dog.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you gauge that by the reaction. If you give a little shock and it's a lower setting, and you can tell they really didn't even feel it,
Yes.
or they're so focused on the snake that it didn't have any effect, then okay, you need to turn it up. I can see that's how, we have 2 dogs, and one of them, I think probably just because more muscle mass, and shocking, at first he was like, hey, what is that? But it really didn't bother him, while our other dog, less muscle, and do a little shocking. Oh, hey, hey, okay, I don't want any more of that. I don't want any more of that. So I would imagine, all the dogs are different. All different sizes? You do all different sizes?
So the smallest dog we've done was a 3.5 pound teacup Yorkie.
Okay.
The largest dog we've done is an 170 pound Great Dane.
Wow.
So
Okay.
any dog imaginable. And what a lot of people say is, well, my dog's not really well behaved, I haven't trained it a lot. Great. It's a lot easier to train a dog that knows nothing, shall we say, than a dog that knows a lot more. So lack of training in the past is not a bad thing.
It's not an issue. How about age? So age of the dog. What do you recommend, or what are the recommendations?
We generally say 6 months or older,
Okay.
and the reason behind that is the old saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, is very inaccurate. Old dogs are great at learning. It's puppies that can't learn. So any younger than 6 months old, and they'll understand the lesson, but it might not last very long, that aversion. As they age and get more curious, especially the male dogs, they're gonna have to try it out again. They grow up, they think they're a bit tough, and they're gonna push the limits. So we recommend 6 months at least. And then age-wise, it's a stressful process. It's not a painful or dangerous process, but it is stressful. So if you've got a large breed dog that's 13, 14, 15 years old, we might say, you know what, that's too old to put them under this amount of stress. Smaller dogs generally live a little bit longer, so you can push that up to 14, 15 years. And obviously we're not going to do it if the dog's in bad health or appears to be injured or anything like that.
No, again, if you just joined in, just started listening or watching, talking with Ben and Julia Shakespeare, and they are the owners of Arizona Rattlesnake Aversion. And hopefully you are watching, because we're going to get one of the rattlesnakes out here in a little bit. I see somebody, Justin Montijo, watching. He's actually a canine with Gila County Sheriff's office there. And his dog Whiskey, great dog that he had since a pup. So just a great story there. Those guys doing great things. Cost, again, if your dog does get bit, obviously, the threat of it dying, and there's that possibility. But we were talking a little before the program, also the cost of anti-venom vials. It's crazy.
It's insane. And we make it our goal to politely ask everyone we meet whose dog has been bitten what the bill turned out to. And it's a lot, even for veterinary medicine, which we know is costly, understandably. The most recent one we asked, about a week ago we asked a woman, and it was $3,300, I believe, for the dog's treatment.
Wow.
That was pretty low.
I was going to say, that sounds very reasonable.
The highest I've heard in the last year, on the other hand, 17,000.
17,000.
And when it comes to humans, hundreds and hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands. In fact, before the program, we were just talking and watching a video of the social media influencer in Florida. They got bit by an eastern
diamondback, yes.
Eastern diamondback, 88 vials of antivenom.
Yes. Yeah, and that anti-venom retails at about $5,500, $5,600 a vial.
Oh my goodness.
So you're talking millions potentially for a human bite, a bad one at least.
Yes. So again, the website that you can go to get more information, to see the cost of the training, to schedule the training, contact either Ben or Julia to get more information from them. The website is ArizonaRattlesnake.com. And again, that's the website for Arizona Rattlesnake Aversion, and this is Canine Rattlesnake Aversion Training. And you two are both of you, well, you're married, so yes, but you're in Payson, you're from Payson here.
Yeah, well, originally Julia's from Minnesota, I'm from Australia, but we chose to make Payson home about 4 or 5 years ago now.
And I was thinking about this when we were talking, Ben. You come from the country that has the most poisonous snakes in the world, the deadliest snakes in the world, and you come to Arizona and you're working with poisonous snakes.
It's ironic.
Yes, I know.
And when people ask that, I usually say, who else is silly enough to do this other than Australians?
Get the Australian, he'll do it.
Self-preservation is not a skill they teach us down there, unfortunately. So.
I think people find it reassuring when the Australian guy shows up with the snakes.
Oh, yeah. And in Minnesota, are there poisonous snakes in
There
Minnesota?
are some venomous snakes, but not nearly the level of Arizona. We actually do train quite a few people who come to Arizona for the winter that live in the Midwest. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, I could see transplants or part-timers that are coming down that just really don't have the experience.
Yeah, we have huge contingents of people from Alaska even that come down every summer that we train. So
There aren't any poisonous snakes in Alaska.
No, there are no venomous snakes in Alaska. No.
Yeah,
So.
I was like, boy, if they got that far north, that would be crazy.
And that's kind of not a problem necessarily, but in Arizona, even though those visitors are primarily here in winter, the snakes don't necessarily hibernate in winter in Arizona. We've always been taught when we were young and in school that animals go to sleep for 6 months and then wake up good and refreshed, and that's not really how hibernation works. Their heart rate lowers, they go into a low activity state where they will eat less and do things less. That you get a sunny day, even a day like today where it's going to be 60 degrees, that gravel is probably going to be 80, 85 degrees on the surface at the height of the sun, and a rattlesnake will happily come out of its den during the winter in Arizona to get a few hours of sun. We actually heard of a rattlesnake bite in Pine Top, so even more elevated than us about 2 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago. So that happened 2 weeks ago?
Yes.
Wow, okay, so even in winter. I think the bottom line is if you're out, especially if you're an avid hiker, outdoor enthusiast, and you're taking your dogs with you, then there is that higher chance, of running into a rattlesnake.
Absolutely.
So
the other thing we like to do in winter in Arizona is get our gardens nice and clean when the weather's nice, and you always run the risk of flipping the wrong rock or clearing the wrong brush pile and finding a little place where they were denning down for the winter as well.
Yes. Well, there you go. So on the program, we've had a sword swallower who actually swallowed swords while on the live stream on the program. We've had an alligator, Gumbo. So I guess now it's time for a rattlesnake. Because we haven't had a rattlesnake. And again, for everyone listening and watching, the rattlesnakes, there are 2 of them. They are both muzzled. And so the muzzle, how is it attached?
So our insurer says to not get too specific with that.
Okay.
Under that theory is that if we explain too much to someone, someone will then try to do it. They will get bitten, and then we'll be on the hook.
No.
I've never talked to someone who's seen it and gone, well, I'm going to give this a shot, but nonetheless,
don't want it to.
The risk analysis is. You know what I'm trying to say. Disagree.
So this is a good time to give the disclaimer, do not try this.
Do not try this. No, do not.
Yes, and hopefully no one should have a reason to try and muzzle a rattlesnake at all. How many other other companies or other organizations use this approach or method?
We know of one or two others that do it the same way as us.
Okay.
Would have to give a recognition to Rattlesnake Reddy in the Valley. They're
Oh, okay.
really one of the pioneers of this method.
Wow.
Cody is the operator down there, and
Okay.
he is a rattlesnake genius. So
Wow.
he's kind of the pioneer of this method, in my opinion.
Mhm.
But since then, there are a few other trainers in Arizona, 2 or 3 maybe, that do it that way as well.
Mhm. And you said before the program, the main reason why other companies don't use this method and they would use the cage or the box is for their safety.
For their
mainly.
safety,
Not for
exactly.
the safety of the animal, but for their safety because of having to put that muzzle on.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's risky for us, but it's what you got to do if you want to do it the best way possible, which we do, especially because, as you mentioned, rural communities like ours, no 24/7 or emergency vets. So it's
Mhm.
even more important here. You're not 10 minutes away from the emergency vet. You're an hour, if not more.
Yeah,
So we got to do it right when we do it in our rural communities.
there we go. So which one do you want to get out of the bucket?
Let's get the Arizona Black, which is the most common in our area. So
Okay.
viewers should be pretty familiar with this. This is what you're generally going to find in Mason.
All right, so again, if anyone just tunes in or it starts watching, this is a muzzled rattlesnake. It has the white muzzle on its head right there. And yeah, that one not quite as colorful as the other one that
No.
you have.
No, and the Arizona Blacks are very colorful as juveniles. They've got all
Mm.
these great shades of grays and browns and blacks.
Mhm.
But as they age, they lose that and they become a solid black with these lovely yellow stripes running down the dorsal, the midsection.
Mm. And you can hear, that's coming over the microphones, that rattle. He isn't as angry as the other one. The other one was a little more upset.
And that's why we try to use Arizona Blacks when we train in Payson,
Oh, okay.
because that temperament
Yeah.
is a lot more relaxed.
And I've seen one of these, it was out on a job site. I was working for a builder here in town doing the landscaping on their new homes. And there was just like a scrap pile, all the scrap wood and material. And there was Arizona Black in that pile on the edge of it. And I walked right by it and it didn't, make a sound or anything. And when I walked back, I saw it there. And just got a shovel and put them on the other side. It was empty, area, but I was very thankful. I said, dude, thank you for not biting me. I am so thankful that you didn't bite me. Here you go. I'm not going to, kill you. Here's empty, it's not like it was in a, if there were houses all around, maybe it would have been different. Because
Yeah.
then it's like, how can I get him away from houses? But by taking him off and putting him out in the woods there, knowing that, hey, you probably don't want to be around here, probably looking for rodents or
Exactly.
some food.
When we build, we disturb the earth and all the rodents come out. So, and our houses as well, obviously big attractors for rodents in our area. Dog food outside, chicken coops outside, even fruiting flowers and trees that the rats and mice might want to eat are going to attract the rodents, and that's going to attract the rattlesnakes. But they don't want to bite you at the end of the day, which was kind of your experience. They want to be left alone. That rattle's not, I'm angry, I'm aggressive, I'm about to attack you. Rattlesnakes have evolved over about 6 million years. So 6 million years ago, they were dealing with megafauna, like mammoths. So that rattle developed as a please don't tread on me. I'm the smallest thing out here, so I need an audible warning for these giant animals to make sure they don't squish me. But we often hear the rattle and think it's a sign of aggression. And as you noted, the black rattlesnakes don't rattle a lot, so we try to focus on the scent a lot, because most of the times in our area, the rattlesnake's not going to give the dog a benefit of that audible warning.
And then again, you can see the muzzle, the white on its head there, and that keeps the snake from biting. It cannot bite, strike the dog at all, or you guys, or anyone that's present. But I can see, as far as making it as realistic as possible, you're able to put the snake down on the ground,
Yep.
right in front of the dog. The dog, like you said, can go up to it, get that good sniff, visual, everything. The movement, it's not restricted at all, so it's, yeah, very realistic.
Exactly, and that's what we're going for, realism. Make it
Mm.
easier for the dogs to understand.
Wow. Well, thank you, goodness, so much. So now we can add this to the list of.
I can even swing past the camera a little bit. So it's
Yeah.
a bit closer on the way back to his house.
And there we go.
Okay.
So, again, if you're interested in getting canine rattlesnake aversion training, it is offered by Ben and Julia right here in Payson. And they use live snakes that are muzzled. And here's the other one. This is the blacktail.
This is a black-tailed, yes, and a little bit more vocal than our Arizona blacks, but very common in our area. Probably second most common after the Arizona black is the
Wow.
black-tailed.
Wow. Such, yeah, so pretty.
They really are. They're exquisite. These ones usually have a green tinge. A lot of people associate green with Mojave rattlesnakes, call them the Mojave green.
Yeah.
Generally in our area, if a snake has a green tint, it's going to be one of these guys. It's
Gotcha.
not that common for a Mojave to be green, actually,
Mhm.
but we've got into this habit as Arizonans of calling them Mojave greens, even
Gotcha.
though they're typically brown or tan, and not green that often.
Yes, and now size-wise, this is kind of the average size, or these full?
Absolutely. There's a bit of a misconception, and there's a lot of studies actually that look at this, but when people see rattlesnakes, we over-exaggerate.
Gotcha.
So your friend will tell you, I saw a 7-foot rattlesnake when I was walking down in Tonto Basin. Very, very unlikely. The largest species of rattlesnakes in Arizona, they're topping out at about 5 feet, a little bit over 5 feet. And that's just because we're in the desert. Animals don't grow as big in the desert.
Mm.
Uh,
Now, how long have you had these snakes? Have you had these the entire time, or since you started?
The collection has grown as we've expanded and kind of
Okay.
developed the business a little bit. We started with 4 or 5 snakes, and at the moment there's about 28, I believe.
Hmm. Do you ever use multiple snakes, or is it always just one snake, or?
Generally, we take 2 snakes.
Okay.
Sometimes we take 1 if we only have 1 or 2 appointments, just because the danger involved for us is doubled when you do
Yeah.
2 snakes. So we try to take 2 snakes as often as possible, especially up here, so we can show them the Arizona black that has a very sedate personality,
Yeah.
and then expose them to something like the blacktail or a diamondback that's going to be a lot more vocal.
Yes.
That way they can understand the snake doesn't always make noise. Don't rely too much on your ears.
Yes, and when you say, and just to make it clear to everyone, when you say the danger, there's more danger with more snakes, it's not the training, it's not when, you're training the dog, but putting the muzzle on.
Putting the
So
muzzle on,
you're having
exactly.
if you're taking 4 snakes, you're putting 4 muzzles on, and that's where the danger comes in for you guys,
Yep.
not for the dog.
Not for
or
the dog,
owner.
exactly.
Yeah.
We do the dangerous bit so the dog doesn't have to.
Wow. And I've noticed none of the snakes, neither of them, have tried to strike or.
And generally they don't when they're muzzled.
Okay.
They are smart enough to know that they're muzzled, essentially.
yes.
I can't open my
They're
mouth.
restricted.
Exactly, and the rattlesnake really does need to open its mouth to get those fangs to unhinge. It can't
Yes.
unhook those fangs if its mouth's closed.
Gotcha.
What they can do, not something that they'll do to the dog, but one of the dangers of muzzling them is they have been known to work their fangs through the bottom skin of that jaw if you're holding them under the jaw for significant amounts of time.
Okay.
And basically piercing their own skin to try and get what's underneath. So that's one of the things that makes the muzzling particularly dangerous. Doesn't impact the training or the safety for the dog. It does make it more dangerous muzzling them.
Gotcha. I have to say hi to Ty Lewis. He is watching, and hey, where are you, Ty? Ty is a truck driver, so no telling where he is right now. Also, Victoria Storm watching, saying hi, and say Ben and Julia are the best.
Oh, thank you, Victoria. And Victoria and the House of Voodoo do some fantastic work for our local exotic animals. So if you haven't heard about them, check them out.
I know it. Need to get her back on. I've had them on a couple times, and yeah, see how big Gumbo. Gumbo's great. Gumbo, was on the program here, and then one of the events. And Ty is in St. Louis, Missouri. All right, hopefully it's not too bad there, the weather and the snow. But yeah, we were out at an event, I think Keep Pace and Clean, and Victoria brought Gumbo out and put him on the splash pad for a little bit. And if you're listening, you're like, why? They put an alligator on a splash pad up there in Payson? One of those guys are crazy. Gumbo's small. Well, it was small. I don't know how much Gumbo's grown.
He's getting bigger, that's for sure.
Yeah. So this is when Gumbo was maybe, in total, maybe 1.5 foot or so, yeah. So he was still a little guy, but yeah, he enjoyed the splash pad too.
He's a cute one. It's weird to describe reptiles as cute, I get that, but he is a cute one.
Yeah. So again, ArizonaRattlesnake.com is the website. If you're interested in getting canine rattlesnake aversion training. And just one last question. How about if we talked about it, you mentioned it a little bit, with multiple dogs. So say you are someone that takes your 2 or 3 dogs out together on a hike. Do you ever do training with multiple dogs so they can, see it together and be in that?
Generally, if you've got more than one dog, we will just do one at a time. So we'll leave one inside or have one take the other one for a walk. Because what we don't want happening is monkey see, monkey do.
Gotcha.
Dogs do that when they're in their packs. So they may act averse to the snake just because the other dog is acting averse to the snake, as opposed to truly understanding why they should be averse to the snake. So we always want to make sure they understand independently, and then when they're back together on the trail, out hunting, whatever it may be, they're going to help reinforce each other. If one of them's a bit unsure, they'll get a reminder from the other dog, but at least initially, we want to make sure they understand separately.
And I just have to ask this, because having 8 children, having 5 boys, 3 girls, boys, is it the same with male dogs versus female dogs? And you're shaking your head,
yes,
Julia. Really?
Male dogs are definitely more likely to test the waters, if you will. So they'll get the initial correction, and then they'll be like, well, that was not great. Let's see if that happens again, and go back in for another sniff.
So after that first correction, we always move the snake, especially with male dogs, and let them have a second attempt. Females very rarely, but as Julia said, the male dog's going to go, well, I didn't really enjoy that, but I'm pretty tough. I'll try it again. I wonder if it'll happen twice.
It can't happen again. There's no way. No, it did. Oh my gosh.
That's males and puppies.
Oh, that's funny. Well, thank you again, Ben and Julia, for coming on this morning and bringing these guys. The rattlesnakes, again, the website, ArizonaRattlesnake.com, has all the information on there, contact information as well, and you can schedule or book through the website. And if you have questions, reach out to Ben or Julia. So thank you everyone for listening and watching this morning. And thank you again to One Tom Plumber for sponsoring our Community Spotlight program. Time to get back to the music here on KRIM with some ELO, Grand Funk Railroad, and Emerson, Lake, and Palmer. But first, let's get an update from the National Weather Service. And you guys have a great weekend, and just a reminder that tomorrow we'll be live streaming the Tim Van Horn Wrestling Tournament all day. So you can come out to the Dome to enjoy wrestling matches, or if you can't get out there, you can watch on our Facebook page or YouTube channel. All right, guys, see you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. I'll put him away.
Yeah.
I keep this so chill. It isn't.
He settled down after a minute.
He settled, yeah.